You. All right, I know we're getting to the end of the day here, and I'm wondering, does anyone want some Red Bull? Because we've got plenty up here if anyone wants some. I think I might take one myself. All right, because we got a quick speech here about wearables, from rings to wearables to ringables. And I didn't come up with that title, and it kind of is a pet peeve of mine, because I don't know where wearables really came from, and it doesn't really describe well what we're trying to do. I mean, to me, this is a screen, not a viewable. This is a mic, not an audible. And this is a seat, not a seatable. So I've always had a problem with that, but I decided I'd go with it. But we're going to talk about what it took to actually get a form factor of a ring. We've been working on it for 5 years. I'm one of the co-founders, and I'm here from San Francisco. And we'll go into a little bit more about that in a bit. I do need a clicker. I did not get a clicker, so I'm just going to say go ahead and click. Where's the clicker to this, or do I need one? Yeah, I could. Why don't I have one on this? All right, good. Going forward. All right, we're going to start off, seeing that we're here in Munich, the home of the automobile and the German automobile industry. I wanted to start off with an analogy, really what's going on with the car industry and what has happened with the adoption of computers and sensors. And this is actually a 1968 squareback Volkswagen. It was the first actual production car to have a computer. And it had about a computer about the size of about a foot, a few inches high, and it was connected to the engine in 8 places. So this computer was the first one to actually be introduced in mass market, and it did one thing. It controlled the fuel injection. So it allowed this car to basically save fuel by introducing technology and sensors. It also only had 3 gauges. It had a speedometer, it had a fuel gauge, and the third one was a temperature sensor. So when something went wrong, it usually meant that you heard some funny noise in the car. You're driving along, you figured you needed to bring it to the mechanic. You had a clueless look when you went to the mechanic. You don't know what's wrong with it. The mechanic looked at you and gave the same clueless look. He didn't know what's wrong with it. And it went on from there. And so that is what is kind of happening today. We are at the stage for wearables, very early stage for where we're going to be. The future really is what's happened. If you look at today's cars, they have upwards of 200 sensors, 20 computers. They can tell you before you even have a problem what the problem is. When you go into the mechanic, they don't ask you a bunch of questions about what's going on with the car. They plug it in and immediately can tell you what's the problem, and they can also tell you your right rear tire needs air. So the evolution of cars, I think, is a good analogy of what's going to happen with wearables and the impact to our lives. This car also, of course, has sensors in it that allows for payments, so you don't have to carry your cash, and it can also eventually drive by itself. So who knows what the adoption of technology will actually take us going forward. All right, let's talk about what's happened to personal technology. And I like this slide because it shows just what's happened in the last 20 years, 30 years. In the 80s and early 90s, the computer was enabled by mass production of semiconductors. Then in the 90s, the internet happened. And that allowed all those computers to start connecting with each other and talking to each other. That enabled an acceleration of adoption of technology and be able to do a lot of things now that we couldn't even imagine. Then in the early 2000s, wireless happened. Now, can you imagine what it was like without wireless? I mean, come on, your phone not being connected to the internet just today can't be thought of. Well, we are just now in the beginning of the decade of the connected human. The fact that today we can actually wear something that you can wear day and night, 24/7, and forget about it. And while we still need to plug in our product every once in a while, we're working on making it so you never, ever have to remove it from your body. When you're able to collect that data 24/7, magical things happen. So I think what's going to happen with the car industry and the impact that technology had with driving is going to happen to wearable technology. Now, the first wearables really were just pieces of components that were taken off of the shelf of other products, mainly cell phones and other small computer devices, and they put them together and they made a wearable, basically a big hunking thing you wear on your wrist. That isn't a real wearable. That is really just a car cut in half to make a motorcycle. What we're doing and what Motiv has been doing for the last 5 years is designing something from scratch all the way down to the component level. We actually took components that didn't exist and created them, and that's design enabled by technology. And what that will enable is a much greater opportunity for wearables to exist. Whereas today, or last year, it was 30 billion. this is a projection that has been made that it'll be 100 billion in just 5 years. So that impact, that growth, the percentage of growth, the market growth that's going to happen is going to be expanding quite rapidly, and that's what we're all talking about today. What constitutes a wearable and what goes into a wearable is actually really pretty simple. It's just a bunch of sensors, it's some core tech that we put together, and that spits out data. And that data goes to an application, the application tells you things. Hopefully those things are informative. Well, to get there, we had to really look at what was possible with wearables. And we looked at the three components that really had to come together. The processing power had to be enough to be able to communicate data and make sense of that data. We do all the processing power on our product. Then we transmit that, but to do that, we needed power. To get that power, we had to design our own battery. We actually had to buy a battery manufacturer to be able to pack that data or the power all into the form factor of this size. And you had to have storage. Storage on the device, if you had to constantly sync, wouldn't work. So we had to have storage, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that all worked out. And over the years, what enabled all this to happen is a massive shrinking of the technology. So I'm just going to go through a few slides here really quickly that shows what's happened with the technology itself. This is all from 2013. This is when we first started working at Motiv. This is what has happened over the years. You'll see that in the crystal oscillator, it went from basically 1/5 the size. The Bluetooth connection, the BLE, that's basically what's transmitting, is now 1/4 the size. And the RGB LED that we have on our device is 1/3 the size. This is extremely fast growth and happening in a very short period of time. It's only going to continue to get better. The memory that we use, 16 times more memory in about a half the size. MCU, basically the processor that we're using, is about half the size, and it gives us 2x the performance. And the PMIC is about 1/4 the size. So what does this all mean? The PMIC's power management in fancy terms. What this all means is that we can produce products that are much smaller, much more seamless, and fit into your life. I'd like to go ahead and talk a little bit more about how we approached it at Motiv to be able to create something that's truly a magical experience. We did not look at the tech first. Most people did. When they first started working on technology, I think most technology-focused companies go, what can we build? So they create a bunch of parts, they pull them together and see what's possible building with those parts. Like I mentioned before, we first started with usability. We figured it had to be something you wear 24/7. You can't take it off because once you take it off, you don't get the data and you're likely not to put it back on. Then we looked at what are people buying. People are not buying big honking plastic straps around the wrist. They're looking at buying very elegant pieces of jewelry. So what we try to do is fit something in jewelry, and we told our engineers that they had to keep it 0.8 millimeters thick. It's really hard to do when they come back and say, well, if we could just put another 1/4 millimeter in there, but you have to keep it the same thickness as basically a wedding band. And then you look at the tech, and then that's when it gets to be a magic moment where you can see that all the technology lines up, and you can actually create something that's truly revolutionary. So what I'd like to do is introduce my co-founder. He's the tech guy behind this thing. He is a mad scientist when it comes to this product. He's going to speak a little bit about what went into this product's development. Go ahead.
I'm Kurt, Motiv co-founder and chief technology officer. When I started, I wasn't actually looking to make a ring. At the time, I was overworked. I wasn't really sleeping a lot. I really wanted to get a device that could allow me to track my sleep and health a little bit better. I think for me, I really love a challenge being an engineer. Looking at the market, I thought I could do better. I thought I could make a seamless experience for people in a ring form factor. As a company, we believe in user-centered design, so coming up with a form factor and working our way down to technology instead of having the technology drive the form. Manufacturing a ring is a huge challenge. We're about 1/10 the size of our competitors, and we have components that are smaller than a grain of sand on our circuit board. Nothing in this thing is off the shelf. Everything has been custom from the algorithms all the way to circuit board and battery all around. We have a very small, thin, flexible circuit board that we had to custom make. We have a very small battery that's curved that has to wrap around your finger. We have a titanium outer housing that's notoriously difficult to machine. We had to go through a lot of effort to figure out a way to actually make the form factor work. But I think in the end, the benefit to everyone is that it's something that you can actually wear all the time. It's something that's comfortable and people want to wear.
right, so that's the introduction of Motiv Ring. We've been in the market for just under a year. We announced at CES. Unfortunately, we're not yet available in Europe. But I did want to talk a little bit about what it does, and we will be available in Europe hopefully next year. A lot goes into being able to sell this product, which I'll talk about in a bit. The things that we really looked at when we built this wearable is, one, we wanted to make it 24/7 wearability. That's, I think the underlying theme of all wearables is they got to be wearable. We wanted to have activity detection. Obviously, when I go for a run, I want this thing to automatically tell me I went for a run, and I don't want to tell it I went for a run. And what we're doing next is something that's very unique, and I think this is where the wearable space is going to go. Rather than us trying to figure out what a run looks like, we're going to just figure out what that movement is to you. So I don't know if you guys have Shazam that you've used when you hold up your phone trying to figure out what a song is. They're just trying to look for that footprint for that song, and they're trying to figure that out. The future is not going to be holding up Shazam for that song. It's going to be holding up Shazam for you. So when you say you're doing something very unique like fencing or yoga, we don't need to figure out fencing for everyone. We just need to figure out what that means to you, and we will learn more about you as you go along. And that's going to be a big change in the way wearables identify the activities we do. Of course, we do heart rate, and we do active heart rate, not just resting heart rate, and that's a unique part about our product. And sleep tracking, we tell you how much or less of sleep you're not getting. For me, it's not been much, so I do appreciate that feature, reminding me that I need to get more sleep. And then, of course, you had to make it waterproof. You can't take it off every time you wash your hands. This is what the app looks like. We also worked on active minutes as opposed to just counting steps. Active minutes are the times that you actually are out there doing something. So I know it feels great to get those steps when you walk to the fridge. They just don't count. So when you actually want to get active minutes, you've got to go out and get your heart rate up. You'll see on here, you see a threshold. You have to get your threshold above this line or above that where it's lighter on the top graph to get those active minutes. That means you're walking faster, you're running, you're doing something that gets your heart rate up. What went into this product? A lot. It was literally going back to the drawing board probably 100 times to figure out how to make this thing. We had to, like I said, come up with our own battery technology. We thought we could find something off the shelf. It was not possible. We actually had to find a company, work with them to build the technology, and then when they started to go out of business, we had to buy that technology and that company and be able to integrate it into our company. The processor, the CPUs, we have two of them. One manages the communication, the other one manages the sensing and the data that we're collecting. You have about 4 days to 5 days of memory on the device. You have 3 days of power. If you try it out, trust me, if we get a chance to be able to sell here in the EU, I'd love to have you guys all wear one. I think you'll see it's a pretty convincing experience. Why the finger? It's really simple. The finger is a really important place to collect this data. If you think about your body, the only place where you can actually have a light shine through and collect data is on your finger. You could do it on your ear, you could do it on your nose, but other than that, your wrist gets too thick. So right now we're still using reflective technology, but in the future we'll be using transmissive technology where we actually shine the light through the finger, and that gives a really good read as to what's going on in your body. And then other things, it's 24/7 comfort. I don't know if you can wear one of those big wrist devices when you sleep. I can't. It's activity awareness. It's on your end of your hand, so you're getting a lot of that movement that you don't get further up or when you have it on your waist if it's a clip-on. Continuous heart rate. When you go to the hospital and you're having some problems, they put something on your finger, right? That's where we put it, same place, to be able to collect that data because you have a lot of capillaries on the finger that we can read. Really strong signal for the blood flow. Sleep tracking, again, when you're sleeping, your hands are not moving around. We can get really high definition on sleep. And again, water resistance. So we had to package this thing all together to make a really good experience. Had to be lightweight, it weighs less than a penny, and it has to be fashionable. So when I go out at night, I don't take this thing off. I haven't taken this thing off. This has been with me for over a year now, and it feels weird when I do take it off. And another thing that we're going into is payments. In the future, wearables are going to, of course, you're never going to take out your wallet, just like you don't take out your cash anymore when you go through a toll booth, bringing that analogy back to that car. You're going to pull out your wearable, and right now, if you've done it with a wrist, it's really tough to get your wrist around there. Finger, you just like a fist bump, boom, you're done. And that's where we're going to go with this. To get the charging's a challenge for wearables. When you think about it, we actually reinvented charging. We have a little keychain charger. You stick it on your USB and it charges in about 90 minutes. But that keychain charger is always with you, so you don't have a bunch of cables with you that you always have to pull out. And then get sizing. Sizing is the biggest challenge. You don't know your finger sizes. No one does. So we actually send you a sizing set first. You try it on, figure out what size you want, come to our website, find out what size it is that you like, pick your color you like, and then it's personalized for you, and we ship it to you right away. Where are we going next? This is just kind of a vision forward. I think everyone in the wearable industry has this slide. We're on fitness today. We're going to go into access, so who you are. Identity is, of course, next. We will know who you are better than anything else because we have all this data. Authentication, making sure it's you when you go through your security stops or when you want to buy something. That will allow you to do basically active commerce, where you have active NFC changing for different types of modes. So if you're going through to get to Metro, it's knowing that it's a Metro system, or if you're going through paying with your Visa, it knows it's Visa. And eventually health. We will be just as impactful. So when you go in the doctor's not giving you a slice of time as to trying to figure out what's wrong with you. He or she will be able to look at your history, just like the person when you plug in your car to fix it can see everything that's been going wrong with your car and understand how to fix it yourself. And that is out of time and also my last slide. So thank you very much. I believe I'm going to be up here with a panel, and the panel will continue with some questions. And I appreciate being here with you all in Munich. Thank you. But other than that, your wrist gets too thick. So right now we're still using reflective technology, but in the future we'll be using transmissive technology where we actually shine the light through the finger, and that gives a really good read as to what's going on in your body. And then other things, it's 24/7 comfort. I don't know if you can wear one of those big wrist devices when you sleep. I can't. It's activity awareness. It's on the end of your hand, so you gain a lot of that movement that you don't get further up or when you have it on your waist if it's a clip-on. Continuous heart rate. When you go to the hospital and you're having some problems, they put something on your finger, right? That's where we put it, same place, to be able to collect that data because you have a lot of capillaries on the finger that we can read. Really strong signal for the blood flow. Sleep tracking, again, when you're sleeping, your hands are not moving around. We can get really high definition on sleep. And again, water resistance. So we had to package this thing all together to make a really good experience. Had to be lightweight, it weighs less than a penny, and it has to be fashionable. So when I go out at night, I don't take this thing off. I haven't taken this thing off. This has been with me for over a year now, and it feels weird when I do take it off. And another thing that we're going into is payments. In the future, wearables are going to, of course, you're never going to take out your wallet, just like you don't take out your cash anymore when you go through a toll booth, bringing that analogy back to that car. You're going to pull out your wearable, and right now, if you've done it with a wrist, it's really tough to get your wrist around there. Finger, you just like a fist bump, boom, you're done. And that's where we're going to go with this. To get the charging's a challenge for wearables when you think about it. We actually reinvented charging. We have a little keychain charger. You stick it on your USB and it charges in about 90 minutes. But that keychain charger is always with you, so you don't have a bunch